the two areas that I would have been involved in were a mental health project and then a natural medicine programme. People wouldn't have much access to healthcare. I mean, 42% don't have any access to healthcare. There's no health system like we have there, so people are reliant on, using what they have. And obviously medicinal herbs are very, very important.
We were working with the indigenous farmers, and myself particularly working with small farmers, extremely poor farmers. They use money lenders to get money for the seeds. They grew their produce and they sold them to middlemen because they didn't have transport to bring them directly to the markets themselves. And the end result was that they got very little profit for their hard work.
Access to education is low. The number of children who can even go to school because they're needed to help at home with minding the younger ones, or they're out working on the farm. I mean, it was amazing when we arrived there the first day we went out, and we went with our own kids, and there we were in the square, and another kid the same age as our daughter Aveen, she was 8 or 9, and here she was with her basket on her head, and she was selling, bracelets and jewellery and so on. And kids are out whatever way they can make money. They say there's something like 1.5 million, and the population of Guatemala is 14 million, out on the streets trying to maybe sell fruit or earn a bit of money. So it's very hard for kids to stay in school because the needs are so great at home.
In school there was maybe 150 kids in the school, and there was 3 toilets. We let it be known that back at home in Ireland, that any funds would be greatly received to enable the school build additional toilets for the pupils. And it so happened then that a gang of them got together on Rains Day, and they went round the houses and they collected monies, which was divided then for I suppose the project in Guatemala. The German individual Eddie Diekmann, who lives back in Ventry with his daughter, was planning to travel around Central America, and Eddie and his daughter took the money that had been collected on the Rains Day and took it over to Guatemala.
Yeah, in the beginning I was, as you can imagine, very confused when I came back from Guatemala in 2006. And after this hurricane destroyed parts of the country, I didn't know where to start. And I met a lot of people who were crying, and I met this old man in nearly 3,000 meters high. They were evacuated from their houses because they were in danger to be destroyed from landslides, and they were living in tents. And he said, "Oh yeah, what can you do for us?" he said. And I said, I said, "We are just a small organization." I said, "I can't promise anything," but he said, "Thanks for coming. At least we are not forgotten." There were 600 people killed by landslides. They were just crosses now, and when you see this, then it's tough. But this old man is the one I never forget.
Initially, I became involved with Hope Guatemala through knowing Eddie, really. Eddie had just come back, I think, from Guatemala when we met him first. I said that we would try to do something when he comes back, maybe. We talked about organising a 10k run from the cafe to Paddy O'Shea's in Dingle. And we did it then, we organised that, and since then I was kind of involved on that level.
During the 80s, the figures are something like maybe 200,000 people were massacred. And it was pretty much a silent war, as they said, because so much of that wasn't covered, or people weren't aware of it. And villages and communities were incredibly traumatised because you had families that lived right beside each other on either side of the conflict, because were forced to make a choice. They either went with the army or they went with the guerrilla movement. And the stories that people had, just unbelievable stuff that they had to keep silent and quiet about. So the mental health programme that I was involved with was addressing some of that.
Original Mayan people, and their living conditions are very, very poor, because over the period of hundreds of years all the land was taken from them, and they hardly have any land, and they hardly have any garden to grow their daily food.
Quite a lot of them were malnourished. They were very small. Quite often they didn't have breakfast in the morning. I mean, there was one lady we asked what did she have for breakfast. She didn't eat anything, and she said that she might go and get some herbs, some weeds in the forest for lunch. That was what she was going to eat that day, and she had no idea what she would eat in the evening, if she would even eat, you know.
People who are living in Guatemala, they're often living in spaces that are like maybe 5 metres by 4 metres. Many people don't have running water. In the rural areas, there wouldn't be electricity in lots of areas still.
The way that they live there on the finca farms is very difficult, because they don't have any rights to the shack that they live on. So they're under the threat of being moved at any minute, you know. So that one old lady we spoke to, she had moved numerous times in her life, and she was at the end. She was near the end of her life, and for me that kind of struck me fairly hard, because she was nowhere near where she grew up, and she had no way of getting back there. She was going to die in this totally different part of Guatemala where she comes from, you know.
So, and if they earn money, they earn about this, what they say at the moment, between $2 and $3 a day. When you see it that way, they're not the funniest.
Guatemala ranks 116 out of 169 countries in terms of poverty, and just comes before Haiti, which would be one of the poorest countries in Latin America. So it's in terms of poverty, it's very high. The infant mortality rate, per thousand, it's like 52 children per 1,000. So and malnutrition is very, very high.
So Eddie spent a few days with our family, and we said, why don't you come out, Eddie, and meet some of the farmers that we work with. So fair play to Eddie, he came out to meet some of the farmers, and he was immediately struck and taken by the poverty in which they existed. And he said, I'm going to do something about this. And anyway, Eddie, he was on holidays in Central America. He returned back to Ireland, and maybe a few weeks later we got a phone call, and we exchanged emails with Eddie, and we put to him a list of equipment that we needed for the particular cooperativo. And lo and behold, some months later, monies arrived to us. Eddie had gone out in the meantime and had sourced funding on his own, and through his contacts he had sourced funding for some equipment, and that money was then used to buy equipment, to buy seeds for the local cooperative. It's a fantastic connection for all of us, really, because we saw for the first time that maybe people in the West can make this direct connection then with people in Guatemala, and there can be a strong link. But we really didn't know at that stage how strong the link was going to become.
I met these local NGOs, and they described the situation there, and then we decide, okay, we raise the money, you buy the stuff, and you prove it, and then we got to prove them. And then I visited them again and to see what they have done.
Searching back through the upset for the way it's grown, ranging up and ranging out, and try to change my ways about. There's a place in the leaf, a place in the bough, found a place for me just now, just now, just now. Moving on with every word, moving with all the words I heard, turning the wheel as fast as I can, turning the wheel to make me a man. There's a man in the moon, a man in the sun, growing strong. There's a man in me just now, just now, just now.
Most families can't afford to pay the grants or what is a scholarship for their children. It's about I think about 25 euros a month. So it includes uniform and these kind of things, and they can't afford it.
The UN and many other organisations will say that the only way to get out of poverty is education, and the only way to improve health is to improve the education levels. I mean, it's the same all over the world, but it's a catch-22 situation because, you know, people don't have the money. Even to put kids through primary school is expensive, and it's all, you know, for books, there's fees all the way, you know, in primary school kids pay, and then again, if they want to go into secondary school, that is very expensive.
Everywhere you travel by public bus, which is quite a novelty because you sit three on a seat, so that's if you have six people sitting across a sort of a standard bus, and it's amazingly tight and crammed, and that's people's the way of travelling in Guatemala. It's very different to our own.
There's 26 languages in Guatemala. They have all got beautiful indigenous dresses. It's the one country where the Mayan indigenous people are still, you know, prevalent, still, you know, in evidence. Whereas in other parts of Central America, you know, the Mayan people are not so strongly represented anymore.
Just the simple act of making the tortillas, which they have to do every day, it can take hours. That's such a, I mean, I went to every family and that's what they're doing all day. I mean, that's what the women are doing for so much of their time, is taken up by making tortillas, fetching water and fetching firewood that will cook the tortillas. And it's just the amount of work in preparing the simplest food is hours in their day. I mean, there was one young girl gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning, prepares the tortillas for the father and the brothers, then makes something to eat before she goes to school, and then she comes back from school and she's again working with the tortillas, working with the food. It takes them so long. It takes them so long to do anything.
One of the most dangerous places in Central and South America is Guatemala City. No? Every day, many gangs kill women. Sometimes when you are getting tired, because it was not all fun these 8 years. It was tough street work, here and over there, and but when you're getting tired and when you remember this, you say, "Fuck, keep going, man. Don't give a shit."
When we would go on a visit to meet people, you know, we would go on visits every day, maybe 4 or 5 visits a day to meet different families and that. And nobody ever asked me for anything. Nobody ever asked me for food or money or anything, or if I could do something, or if they could get something from me. Nobody asked me anything. The only thing that they wanted was solidarity, was that their story would be told somewhere.
We learned one Spanish word over there which stuck with us all the time, and it was the word acompañar, to accompany someone and to journey with someone. And before we went to Guatemala, one of our friends said, well, you know, just going to Guatemala will help the people over there know that there are other people interested in them.
The clinic in Serna, we initially supported Dr. Edwin Rojas. When Eddie was there a couple of years ago, he about 2 years ago, I think, he realised that the clinic were about to lose their doctor, and if they lost the doctor, they would have lost the clinic in time, you know. So we decided, Hope Guatemala, that we would cover his salary for that year. It's what is good and bad about Guatemala, really. It's working against all of the ills that are going on there, and it's successful, I think. They teach midwives that come in from the surrounding villages. They would come in and they run maybe 2-3 day courses. The midwives can stay in the clinic and they have their courses within the clinic, and then the midwives can go back into their villages outside, and there they have they then give the information out to the other midwives in the surrounding villages. They feed 50 children every morning. 50 to 60 children that wouldn't have had that's their meal for the day, and at the same time they feed the kids' mothers as well, and anybody else that wants to come in can eat as well. And in return for the mothers being fed and for the kids being cared for a few hours, the mothers have got to do an hour or two work, an hour or two's work around the clinic, and then they're free to go home.
Vivo en la oscuridad. Esta noche déjame adorarte en mis brazos. Yo daría mi vida por ti. Tú eres mi corazón. La vida es vacía sin ti. Tú eres mi corazón.
The organisations, everybody says small step by small step, just tiny step by tiny step, and you really can't look at the bigger picture sometimes because it is just too depressing. It's suffocating, the how bleak it is out there. But if you can get local and just stay within a small group and keep your project small, you really have a chance to make a difference, you know. You can really have success on that level, even though it can be washed away in a minute. One of the things that they wanted me to bring are, the next time we come, are maps, just simple things. They've no idea, I mean, they've no idea where Ireland is, or no idea, a vague idea of Europe, but a vague idea of Guatemala and where it is, you know. I mean, they've no real access to education outside of their own surroundings, you know. There's no maps of Guatemala there. It's very difficult.
We gained far more than we gave, for sure. The local people that we lived with and worked with, who were very poor in material goods, were very rich and generous with their time. During the last number of years, differing members of the committee have travelled to Guatemala to see at first hand what life is like in Guatemala, and upon their return to Ireland, they are much more and even more motivated to drive on the work of our committee back in Ireland.
It was an honour to be with these people, because these people had risen to the top of the organisation through living there, through actually they had suffered desperate stories, and they had lived through it all, and they had risen to the top. Their lives were in danger all the time, you know. And it was an honour for me to be with them, you know. every year around the same time, April, the 24th, 25th of April, we have the 10k run from the cafe to Paddy O'Shea's. That's always been greatly supported, great fun as well. We feed everyone that partakes with beans and tortillas, the traditional Guatemalan food. And then, I mean, we've had the Dingle Carnival band plays beforehand. And then back at Paddy O'Shea's, there's this year we had Cabbage Patch played, a local band as well, a local rock band. And we stay around for another hour or two, a couple of raffles, and it's a really nice day, really lots of fun, and lots of people really make the effort as well to run or walk the 10k. We've maybe 3 or 4 major events on during the year, and then a couple of smaller events then as well. And we have a sister charity in Germany, and they have similar events.
I really want to give thanks to the Dingle Peninsula community who have supported this project at arm's length, because many of them have never been there. They've never actually had the opportunity to see what the living conditions are like or to mix with local communities, but yet they have invested in those local communities. And I know for sure that the monies that have been raised in Dingle and throughout the peninsula here and throughout Ireland and Germany now at this stage, that every penny and every cent of that money is well used